Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock here, practicing necromancer. Today, I want to bring something new to you, something that most people don't really think about, and I think it's actually important for people to understand this application. Today, we have come accustomed to giving away our hard-earned cash, to the governments. But why is this a thing? Why do certain people get tax breaks and others don't? Why is one group, say middle class, overly taxed, whereas say the first class, such as the rich, don't get taxed? And why is it better to be a member of the homeless, if you will, than to be a part of that? Any governmental BS. Well, let's take a good historical look at taxing the people, and I think you'll see where this fits into biblical and religious aspects as well, because it is something that really fits into a lot of categories here. And as a lot of you know, I've been really delving into things like stocks and bonds, and literally, just experimenting with finances and everything, and trying to further my education in that department. So when I came across this, I thought it was kind of interesting. And I happen to remember my early religious, upbringing and the grooming aspect, which is one of the reasons I always hated asking for money. But now today I realize it's a good thing. So here it is. Every culture going back to ancient Babylonia, Sumeria, Acadia, Greece, Roman, um, even the Middle East, if you will, going as far down as Giza, always taxed the people. And this is why. The only time it became necessary to tax its people was to wage a war, because it was a costly war. And it always took money, or dineros, if you will, to, they had different names for them throughout the years. And denarii, dineros, currency, money, Bitcoin, you name it, throughout history, it's had a lot of different names for currencies. And it took a lot of this to put an army together, to feed that army, to wage a war in a different land, a different country. So during this time, it was necessary to tax the people, saying, "Hey, we can't do this by ourselves, governmentally speaking. So we're asking the people to drop some money and kind of help us out. This is why we're going to war. This is why we have to fight this war, and we're just informing you." Well, guess what? That kind of worked, and throughout history, we see this as a key element and component through anthropology practices. Okay. Now, it's interesting, and this is called social anthropology. Okay. Social anthropology is where you are studying a culture and their habits, how they operated from day to day activities. So here it is. Roughly around the time of Christianity, things started changing. Okay, this is the Judeo Christian institutions. When countries were formed instead of being tribal, we began seeing the separation of classes, the rich and the poor. And it became necessary to entertain the poor, the culture. Think of the Colosseum in ancient Rome, in Greece. Okay, this is where it became necessary to entertain through bloodshedding, the gladiators, if you will. Now, what's interesting is even though we see this, we see the Hashishin, which was around from the 6th century BC to 12, what was it, 1275 to 1285 AD. Okay, and they were always isolated. This group was isolated, and they were known as Samsara. Okay, the order of the assassins. Okay, there were assassins. They were holy men and women who literally left the world behind to pursue their own practices, their own lifestyle, and they were highly feared. Think of think of the Hashishin as modern day peacekeepers. Okay, they were diplomats. They were the ones that, if there was a feuding nations, they would step in and go, "Hey, you're in the wrong. You need to pay." Okay, type thing. Otherwise, you'd wake up with a dagger in your pillow with a note saying, "Ha, ha, guess what? You're fucked. We could have killed you at any time." You know what I'm saying? So, Samsara was actually an Arabic term for assassin. These people were holy monks, and their founder was actually a part of the Shem priesthood, which was kind of cool to see and to actually realize. Because sometimes these Shem priesthoods, the first, second, and third dynasty of Egypt, was run out of town, and they actually formed another order, another foundation. So by the time you get to the end in the extermination of the Hashishin, who today ironically are associated with the Assassin's Creed games, ironic, I know, they take stuff based off reality of history and make it into more entertainment, like the gladiators. So in warfare, it directs the people into alignment to fight a common goal. Even Sun Tzu, in his book The Art of War, stated this. So let's bump it up a couple of years, and now we have the Holy Wars. We have the Crusades. We have the Knights of Templar. Okay, the Knights of Templar were the Pope's private army, and they were known as the protectors of the crossroads throughout Europe. I mean, they had temples. They were some of the richest individuals out there, and they literally had castles, just like the Hashishin, ranging from Europe all the way over into the fucking Middle East. Okay, right up into Jerusalem, even. And it was interesting because what happened to them? Why were they dubbed devil worshippers? It was because they became too rich, and the cardinal had to make a sacrifice and a statement out of them. Because guess what? Like all heroes, they eventually become villains. History has shown this time and time again as well. So here it is. Um, they became too rich, and the church said, "Guess what? You're fucked." And so here we see another order, a religious foundation collapse. Every time in the past that you see the oracle of Circe, for an example, or a religious cult such as the priesthood of Anubis or Artemis, we see where the followers through their rites would come and they would throw coins as offerings. And this became known as the Hebrew term for tithe or ten. Okay. So fast forward to the JCI, in the time of the JCI. The first Bible was written back in, what was it, the 11th, 12th century, and it was associated with the Codex Gigas, and this was known as the Vulgate Bible. And the first official Vulgate Bible was done in the 16th century. Okay, all other Bibles from that time forward came from that Bible. Okay, that biblical Bible. Okay, so so we're going to go with the King James. okay, or the New King James, okay. If you have the Teacher's Reference Edition, I would recommend that because it gives a lot of sources that you can go to other scriptures. And you're going to go to Leviticus 27, verse 30. Okay, that's chapter 27, verse 30. And in this particular verse, it kind of gives you that sense of where the people, the congregation, will give 10% of their overall income to the church, not to the pastor, not to the Vatican, but to the church. And basically, the thought form here was to maintain that individual church. Hence, why most churches have roughly around 10 grand in their account at any given time. It's also why the government will sit there and separate church from state, and yet they're going to allow Christian Bibles and Islamic traditions into our schools. We're swearing our government officials in by the Bible, not by a satanic Bible, not by a Wiccan Bible, not by the witch's Bible, but a Christian Bible. Okay, so it's kind of biasness there, and you're seeing that biasness as they're doing this, but yet somebody who's a Satanist or a necromancer or just plain witch or warlock can't practice on any government land. Okay, run land, and the schools are literally run by the government. Okay, they are run by the government, which is in return run by the church. So let's see how this literally came around. So church, the Vatican is where the Pope is. Okay, Vatican City. He has his own personal army, his own personal guard. He has a fortress. Okay, and his own police force. And that's how rich he is. And they've collected so many of the old grimoires and everything that sit in an airtight bunker underground. And only one person, the librarian, if you will, is the only one who has the ability to go in and handle these things. So it was kind of cool to see that too. So let's just go down here. So as you're going down through the governments, let's say for an example 1799 to 1816, we see where England started levying taxes towards the people. Okay, and this was to wage war against Napoleon. In 1861 to 1865, the American government got involved in taxes yet again. Okay, and this was to tax the American people so that they can wage war against the Confederacy, which was the southern states, which is now known as the Bible Belt, okay, here in America. And it's ironic because when the colonies separated from England, the first kickoff was the Boston Tea Party. And that was just after the King of England had levied taxation yet again on tea. Okay. So it was kind of interesting to see how that came down. So now you got the French and Indian War, you got the American Revolution, you got the Civil War, the War of 1812, and so forth that are coming into play here. And it's like it's all surrounding taxation. And who's benefiting from this? Not the people, but the government and the church. Okay. So roughly around 1874, England levied a permanent taxation. America soon followed suit in 1913 by making it a permanent income taxation. Okay, and did a little, how should I say this, scramblization, if you will, of the 16th Amendment. But what's ironic here is that even if you go into the 14th Amendment, and then you go into the Fourth Amendment, on top of that, it shows you that the American people or any people of this nation has a right to make a living unhindered. Okay. But yet, due to this little scramblization of the 16th century, it allows the government to collect taxes once a year, okay, to help maintain that government, okay. So here we are today, and we look back and we see this 50 years that it took America and Britain, who were originally one nation, by the way, and then all of a sudden became two countries. Literally 50 years by the time in between the first official taxation making being made permanent to when it was actually done and became a part of day activities. Okay, so now you've got uh, Freud's son, who came up with advertising. Okay, back in what was it, 1937, I think, 1939 region. Don't quote me on that. I may be a little bit off. To where Betty Crocker cake mix came out and was on the shelf and nobody bought it. So he suggested adding a couple ingredients because keep in mind, up to this point, guess what? Everything from cake making to making meals and preparation of meals was done the old school method of actually doing the fucking work. Okay. So now the boxes were repackaged and they said, oh, guess what? Just add an egg and some water. Poof, you got a fucking cake. Okay. So so now, flash forward to today, everything from Credit Karma to television ads, TV ads to radio ads is all advertisements of where to go to do your fucking taxes. Okay. You can't even go into a church, okay, where they're not having the offering played out for you to give money to them. And they're always coming up with excuses of why they need your money. Okay? So here it is. Leviticus 27:13 says 10%. 10% shall be given to the church. 10%. And the responsibility of that church is to maintain that church in its programs. So even if we see, for an example, the Satanic Temple, okay, and this is something that is kind of funny because they'll sit there and do these news ads of saying of hypocrisy, okay, and they'll say, well, we're going to war, okay, we're going to go to war and we're going to sue this county or this state over such a issue, like say abortions or religious discrimination, and then sit there and go, well, we're doing this for all Satanists. But yet in their newsletters, they'll sit there and go, we feel our members' rights are being violated. So which is it? Your members or the entire community? You see the difference there. Okay. So I want to point this out to you. I know a lot of people are aware of the TV show or the TV movies that have played out along with the books. And I'm not sure if they came out with comics or not, but um, it's called Robin Hood. Okay. Now I want to point something out to you. What, which is more of a villain? The guy that gave up his status as a duke, a, to become a villain and an outlaw, to steal from the rich and give to the poor, or that of Prince John, who's constantly taxing his people to death. And he's using the influence of a judge as a jailer, the sheriff of Nottingham, to enforce his rules. Also, he can remain in power. Okay. Now, I want you, this is called the Robin Hood effect. Okay. And society today has become lucrative on this. Now, why did I just use the term lucrative? It is because you're so gullible. Okay, you sit there and say the middle class will sit there and go, well, guess what? The rich need to be taxed 10 times more. Okay, you are they need to, because they're rich, they can afford it. Well, if you look at the original taxation, it was levied against the rich, not the middle class, not the third class, meaning the homeless, but to the rich. Okay, they owned some of the largest plantations out there of cotton, of gold, of silver, you name it. They had the largest plantations because they understood to use somebody else's money, investors, and they would always have it within the form of how should I say this? They would do this through insurance. So if you put in $900 into your bank account, do you think it stays there? The answer is no. Maybe $100 will stay in your account, but the other $800 is loaned out to other people for startup businesses, for purchases such as, say, for an example, car loans, things that people think are assets, when in fact it's actually a liability, such as your home. Owning a home is a liability. So, because you're putting out 10 times more than what the home and the property is actually, you know, worth. So, so in reality, by the time the money gets back to the bank, they've made a profit. Okay, they've made a profit. They took $9,900 and turned it into $90,000. Okay, see, this is how the rich do it. So the legal laws that were put in place to protect the middle class and the poor was actually levied against them, and it was flipped onto them. So now the middle class is the heaviest taxed. It is up to the middle class to maintain the country. Okay, so that was kind of interesting from a historical sense, not just a religious sense, to of how it was used to maintain temples and churches and a physical foundation of an order, not just an army, but now to wage war from one country to another. And the legal laws that were put in place to protect the people are now being used against the people of the countries to maintain slavery. It's just another form of slavehood. That's all it is. So when I was thinking about this and studying this, it was kind of interesting to see how you take one thing that was meant to be good and you twist it into something evil and vile. Take Biden and his administration that kicked off the witch hunt against Donald Trump. And even though he's no longer in office, here we are an entire term away from when he was removed from office due to being outvoted and Biden being put in. They're still going after him because he's a capitalist. Okay? He's a capitalist. Corporations keep the governments going through consumerism, through products. And it was interesting to see this because it was kind of interesting to see this because of the fact that when you think about how a corporation is run, it is built off a foundation built for skyscrapers. You're not going to build a skyscraper with a foundation of a house. It's just not going to add up. It's not going to um, remain standing. It's like playing on a deck of cards. You one little misalignment and the entire deck comes crumbling down. Well, guess what? We're at that stage now where that one card is all it's going to take and the entire system is going to crash. That's all it's going to do. You've already got threats of another civil war. here in America. You've already got threats of the American people uprising against the government. Did we not see this during the war, the Revolutionary War, starting with the Boston Tea Party? Did we not see this through the Civil War, where the lower portion of this country tried tearing itself away from from America, only to be forced back into submission? Okay, do we not see this through limiting China, and yet they become a nuclear country? Do we not see this where we went in trying to police the world without having that firm foundation back home here in America? Taxation is a part of everything today. From going to stores, people can't even afford to live because everything's so fucking high. I was watching a video earlier today, and I believe it was on TikTok, and it said there was a single mother living in, I want to say, Florida, who was saying, "This is the first time I've had to buy food stamps because I can't afford anything outside of that to live on for me and my kids." When is enough enough? That's all I'm saying. When is enough enough to where the government is going to step back and say, okay, we don't need this money. Enough's enough. But instead, they're corrupting the Constitution that was put in place to protect the American people. Religion was separated. Church was separated from state, and yet they're constantly keeping it in the same circle. It's all run by the church. The government is run by the church. The government polices the people. Our education is limited because the government tells the schools, this is what you can preach. This is what you can administer to our children. You want to know why the Japanese were able to bomb Pearl Harbor back in 1941? It's because they thought outside the box. They took a look at where everything was. They spoke in riddles. They got in parables. They ended up getting the lay of the land and realizing, well, we can't actually bring a sub into this location because of this. But if we did this to a torpedo, wow, we can drop it and it'll just stay close to the surface instead of going down into the water like an average torpedo, and we could take out a battleship. Interesting. And all it took was putting 2 pieces of wood in a plus sign over the propeller. That's all it took. That's all it took. The rest was just a surprise attack. So when you look at today's agendas through religious perspectives, you can't even get on social media these days without seeing Christians going nuts, talking biblical scriptures in their own versions. And yet 99% of them don't have a fucking clue about what they're talking about. I can't tell you how many times I've had Christians come to me and tell me that I'm serving the devil. Do you want to go to heaven? Do you want to do this? Well, let me ask you this. Where are you putting your treasures? Where are you putting your treasures? You're giving all your money to the church. You're keeping them in power. You got people like Anton Zanderlevy's son going to Peter H. Gilmore in the COS, begging them, literally telling them, because my father was the original founder, you need to pay me such and such amount of money. It's like, why don't you get off your ass and get a fucking job? But you can't get online and see that even in the Bible it says that Jesus told his first apostles to leave everything and he would make them fishers among men. Lay up everything. not on earth where it can be corroded, destructed, destroyed, stolen. Put it up in heaven where it'll be kept for all eternity. And yet people constantly give to the church. Constantly. Taxes for this, taxes for that. I know one church within a 10-year period, within a 7-year period, 7-year period, they revamped that church about 5 times. 5 times at $22,000 per time. $21,000 to $22,000 per time. And that was just to renovate. Don't even get me started on the cost of the product that was needed to be purchased. Pitiful, isn't it? And yet the body is supposed to be the church, the temple, not the actual place. But yet people have made it the church. What's that old expression? Home is where the heart is. It's where you lay your head at night. Doesn't matter if it's in a cave. Doesn't matter if it's in a hut. Doesn't matter if it's in a castle. That's where you make your head. That's where you make your bed. That's where you lay your head. Right? But yet, they'll find any excuse to take your money. And if you don't pay, you end up in a court of law to be forced to pay. Well, let's see. The 14th Amendment says that you have a right to earn a living, unhindered by the government. The 16th Amendment says, as of 1913, that the government has a right to tax a certain amount for certain consumerism goods. But yet they've expanded that over the years to everything. The almighty dollar is what everybody wants. No wonder everybody's miserable. No wonder everybody's fucking miserable. Funny. And yet, there's a difference between a thief and the government, right? The thief doesn't ask to take your shit. He or she just does. The government will sit there and send out letters saying, hey, we need you to give us all this documentation. You go to federal, low-income based federal housing, and they go, oh, we need your last 4 pay stubs. Or we need this. We need to get into your account. We need to do this. We need to do that. Hey, we need this. Really? A thief doesn't ask permission. The government does. So like Prince John in today's Joe Biden, the question is, which is more of a villain? The government or that of somebody trying to make a difference? Like Biden. Or not Biden, but Trump. Like Donald Trump. And it's interesting seeing how the capitalists work and how the rich get richer. Interesting, isn't it? Why use your own money when you can limit your liabilities, focus on your assets up front, and then those rewards come later? America is young compared to most of the world, societal wise. Just like Christianity is young compared to religions of the world. So the question I ask is this: why are you permitting it to remain in power? You have a right to stand up against the government. You have a right to bear arms. You have a right to conceive or to terminate a child based off mental health and safety. You have a right to believe what you want to believe, religiously speaking. And most importantly, you have a right of freedom of free speech. First Amendment, 13th Amendment, 16th Amendment, Fourth Amendment, 14th Amendment, and then you have Fifth Freedom, which gives the people the right to stand up against the government and say, fuck you. We're not dealing with your shit. Wow. That's why it's called Fifth Freedom. Amazing, isn't it? And what's funny is that when you have the knowledge and the ability to stand up, they really fucking hate it. They really fucking hate it. So yeah, they really hate that aspect. So I thought, like I said, I'd give you a little bit of a historical account here about taxing, showing you it's not just in religious perspective, but it's also in everything that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I was talking with my general manager over the last few weeks, and kind of just, and he went to his AGM at the time, and he says, "How the fuck did he know? How did he know?" And it's interesting because this is the other aspect. You can call it witchcraft, you can call it mediumship, whatever you want to call it. Okay. But when you're working in a business, you tend to start noticing details. All of a sudden, you're no longer able to have family discounts. Okay. That's indicator number one. Number two, certain items, like, say, something out of a bottled, like a bottle of soda or a milk, for an example, that's in a fridge, is no longer considered to be employee meal. Okay, especially when it says 100% employee meal, right? 100%. They pay for your meal. Okay, so so that's no longer on the plate. Okay, and then all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of the product that you should have not being there. They're utilizing the excuse of labor law hours. Okay, labor law hours. Okay, this is an indicator that shows you that the company is losing money. The store is losing money. It does not have the money to maintain itself. Why? Because number one, anytime every year, every week, you're seeing the same employees, and yet you go underneath the list, and you have all these other. You have like 7, 9 employees not working, but yet you see the same 4 employees, always. Okay, so those are indicators that the store is losing money. So when you start putting things together and you're showing the boss saying, hey, you might want to pay more attention to this, apply more to your assets column and limit your liabilities. Look at your balance sheet compared to your income sheet, your finance sheet, your income sheet, compare those two, and then bring it down into what is known as a balance sheet. Okay, it should balance out, right? You have certain things that are considered expense wise, especially when it comes to taxation. Now, all of a sudden, the AGM is gone. Okay. The former district manager is now a general manager. The former regional manager now suddenly owns her own business. Okay. The general manager suddenly steps down, claims it's due to medical reasons, but he's going to be gone for a little bit and will return as your AGM, your assistant general manager, and eventually someday become the general manager once more. Because fast food, for an example, not everybody is cut out for that world. It's like not everybody is cut out for some of the darker practices, such as the agorai of ancient India, the Dukan of Indonesia, Malaysia area, okay, the necromancer, or even the becoming a true one of the true what I call the true Satanists. Okay, a Satanist is born, not bred. Okay, is bred, not born. Well, you know what I mean. They're they're literally they are made from birth. They come into this world a Satanist, and the thing is that they're not going to believe the horse shit that's going around out there. Nowadays, it's become nothing more than a fad, just like Christianity, but everything comes down to money. Now, the employees have to go out and purchase shirts because the company's too cheap to pay for. You see, it's the excuses that keep popping up. This is why we don't have it. This is the reason behind we're not doing this no more. But yet, if you're a manager, you get a free pass. If you're an employee, well, you get 3 write-ups and you're fucking gone. Interesting how that duality continues to show up no matter what the topic. Doesn't matter if it's religion, doesn't matter if it's government, doesn't matter if it's corporation, you're going to see it. So build upon a strong foundation. That's one of the things I liked about not George, but Robert Kiyosaki's work, such as Rich Dad Poor Dad. Increasing your financial IQ and really, doing what I do and working with who I work with. You know, you're in charge of your own destiny. You're in charge of your own growth, your own knowledge. And I was talking to a lady from North Carolina over the last couple of days, and last night she and I were sitting there talking while I was at Dunkin' Donuts, downtown, and she says, "I'm really glad that I came across you by accident." And I said, "Why is that?" And I said, basically, how so? And she says, "You are full of knowledge. You're full of wisdom." And then you got my apprentice who every so often calls me a master, and it's like, I'm not a master. you know, People are seeing me as an elder, and it's like, I don't consider myself any of these things. I'm just a guy that loves to research to make myself better, you know? And that's one of the things I like about the path that I'm on, is because it's about self empowerment. It's about self betterment. It's about you being responsible for bettering yourself and in making your world better in all areas. Okay, because there's always room to fucking grow. Always. That's why I always tell you guys, you know, whatever you preach, always back it up with numerous sources, and always make yourself available to the public, because you are responsible for the things that you do and say. So, yeah, that's the way I look at it. All right, that's the way I look at it. So that's why I kind of gave you that little backdrop on taxes and taxation and what it was used for, why it was used for, from maintaining a temple to going to war, and then all of a sudden it's made permanent and where we are today. And now society's had a fucking enough, and you're about to have another civil war. I guarantee it, within about 5 to 10 years, you're going to have another civil war. The Third World War, that's already kicked off. You know, that it's going to be a while before it even reaches America. Okay. But the point is that when you step out of your comfort zone and you look at new ways to create, I guarantee it, you're going to see things in a whole new light. This type of thing was enlightening to me, especially since I've been doing stocks and bonds and trying to get into this stuff for literally the last year and a half, give or take a few months. And it was interesting because now I've got people coming to me giving me advice. People who are successful, by the way, through real estate, through corporations, giving me that opportunity to learn from them. And it's like, wow, things do come around, don't they? Hmm. Things do come around. It's fucking amazing. It is amazing. And as a history buff and somebody who enjoys anthropology, somebody who studies death and dying, seeing that corrosion, seeing that all that bad mojo, if you will, guess what? Yeah, you're seeing it right there. Jump in on that, guys. Start learning for yourself. All right, I'm out. Have a good one.